Hey everyone, Fox here from Fox and Kit Woodworks and Fox Den Videos, and I am bringing you the second set of 6 days of the 12 days of tools for Christmas. And in this, we're going to be going over in a little more detail the different types of tools from day 7 to day 12. Now, I'm going to apologize. I was hoping to release this the same day I released the 12th day one. Unfortunately, life happened, and like most things, it got pushed off to the side. However, bonus for you guys, a lot of these gifts are quite expensive and something that you probably want to do a little bit more thinking or talking with your woodworker DIYer. So this will allow you to maybe get that last minute gift in by either putting in a gift card or a picture in a giant box to surprise them for Christmas Day. So for day 7, we talked about table saws. Now, table saws come in a variety of different sizes, from tabletop all the way up to cabinet saw, ranging from $200, $300, all the way up to $3,000, depending on all the different things you add to them. Now, if your woodworker's having a hard time trying to decide what they'd like to choose, I'd have them go look at this video over here and this set of shorts, because this is where I go over the different types of table saws and who they are right for. Table saws come in a variety of different blade sizes, ranging from 7 1/4 all the way up to 12 inch, though the common size is 10 inch. And they come from platforms that are small enough to fit on your table to big giant ones that are the size of your dining room table. On the 8th day, we discussed miter saws. And miter saws basically allow us to do cross cuts and angled cross cuts. Typically, very common, easy ones that are tabletop that use a 10-inch blade are just going to be a chop, miter / bevel cutting saw, which what that means is its only ability is to go up and down and either adjust the blade angle left and sometimes right, or the blade to the backstop to the left and to the right. This is going to allow you to do different angled cuts to be able to do maybe work around the house, like let's say some chair rail that your wife really wants you to put in. Just saying, it's a good investment for you wives out there. They also come in sliding compound. Basically what that means is that there's a bar that goes behind the blade and it unlocks and it allows the blade to go back and forth to cut wider pieces of wood. On a simple chop saw one, you can find smaller ones that are 7 1/4 inch to 12 inches, but the cutting diameter that it's going to allow is only going to be about, let's say, 4 inches on the smaller ones and up to, or 3 inches on the smaller ones, all the way up to maybe 6 inches on a 12 inch, maybe 8. But with a sliding compound, it's going to give you that additional, 10 to 12 inches of movement to cut even wider boards. On the 9th day, we talked about joiners. And joiners are really a tool for the enthusiast or small business owner. You can buy some cheaper 6-inch ones for a couple $100s, which are great to start off on. But once you start kind of getting into woodworking more, or your DIY or woodworkers really getting into it as a hobby, you're probably going to want to get a bigger sized joiner. And what joiners do is allow the face of the board, which is the wider flat part, to be actually cut flat and smooth. And then you turn that face against the fence and run an edge through so that you get a perfect 90-degree corner. And by getting that perfect 90-degree corner, you can then make a reference cut on the other side to make sure they're parallel, and then run it through a planer to thickness plane it so that the whole thing is square. Which led us into our 10th day, where we talked about planers. And planers are essentially that. They thickness plane things down to size. If you have a 1-inch board and you don't have a bandsaw big enough to fit the board through, you put it through a planer so that it can thickness plane it down to 3/4 inch. The big caveat with this is that it will cut the board with the shape in it. So if your board is bowed or twisted or cupped, if this is the width of the board, it's cupped, it's going to compress it and cut it down to 3/4 inch thick, but then it's going to release back into that shape. That's why if you are going to start milling your own wood, having a joiner and a planer together is going to work really well. Now, I'm not saying you can't get away with other tips and tricks like having a planing or a joiner jig for your planer. I used that for a while and it worked out quite well. Or using a a joiner edge jig on your table saw. But for the fact that if you can have all 3 machines set up and not having to switch from jig to jig, you can really get a smooth process of milling your wood. On the 11th day, we talked about 2 separate items, a bandsaw and dust extraction. And bandsaws are great and come in varying sizes, again, from tabletop to freestanding, that range from, I believe the smallest I've seen is either 6 or 8 inches, all the way up to 14 or 20 inches, bigger with industrial. And it allows you to do different types of cuts on your wood. For one thing, it allows you, if you put a thin blade on it or have basically a piece that actually acts as a stabilizer, to do scroll cutting with it, basically twisting it around, making circles. And you could actually do I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's basically where you can take a block of wood and you can cut it into a shape of a reindeer just on the bandsaw. That being said, the one thing that I like to use a bandsaw for is resizing wood, because a lot of the wood I buy is what they call 4/4, or basically 4/4, meaning 1 inch. But by the time it's kiln dried and everything else, it's actually a little less than, 4 or an inch thick. It's more like somewhere between 3/4 and 1 inch. If we don't want to waste a bunch of wood, let's say we need to get it down to a 1/2 inch, we can run that through a bandsaw and then resize it so that we have a 1/2 inch piece or a little over a 1/2 inch piece and another piece that's a 1/4 inch thick. Another benefit of bandsaws is that they have a very thin blade so they don't waste a lot of material. Now, remember, when picking out a bandsaw, the size of the bandsaw doesn't reference the height of the bandsaw, but the throat of the bandsaw. And the throat is from the blade to where the machine is and can allow a piece of wood to go through. So, if you find an 8-inch bandsaw, that means you have 8 inches of room to work towards the inside, not 8 inches tall. Typically, it's going to be about half that. I currently have a 12-inch Craftsman bandsaw, and I can get about 6 1/4 inches thick or tall through that bandsaw. So if your woodworker's looking at trying to do something bigger than that, you're going to need to go and do your research and find a bandsaw that either has a adjuster, meaning it has a separate piece that can go between the top wheel and the bottom wheel to make it higher, which then means you'll have to switch blades, or get them a planer. It'll do the same thing, you just waste some more wood. On the second part of the video, we talked about how much dust is going to be getting kicked out in the shop from all this different woodworking. And some type of dust extraction, dust collection is going to be necessary. I currently just use a shop vac with some dust separators. And that is probably the easiest way of getting into dust collection. You basically buy a shop vac. I would suggest a higher horsepower, somewhere in the 5 to 6 horsepower realm. And you take that with a dust separator, which is basically a lid or a self unit, like a big giant bucket, 5-gallon bucket or bigger. And what happens is, as it's sucking the air into the shop vac, it pulls it through this separator to allow the particles that are heavier, that would typically, or bigger and heavier, that would typically clog up your filter faster, and let those fall to the bottom while only collecting the smaller fine dust particles into your filter. Now, if you're looking for bigger and better machines, they do have dust collectors that have a 4-inch tube, a bigger motor, and bigger bags to collect all that dust, and dust extractors that have HEPA filters built in. But remember, even for your shop vacs, you can buy better filtration bags and dust filters to make sure that all that fine dust doesn't get in there. And on the 12th day, we talked about laser engravers. Now, this is a very niche item. We talked about my S1 40 watt, which is behind me, and my F2 in front of me. But this is something that, if your woodworker DIYer has been talking about, this is something that they probably really want to get into. And there's a lot of different resources online that they can do to research that. I have actually just started dropping some reviews on the F2. And honestly, after using both of these machines, either one would be great as an entry level for them, especially the F2 because of the price point. But the S1 would be good too, because if you're doing bigger items, you're going to need to have a bigger work surface to put your item into, and that does a lot bigger surface area. Again, talk to them, figure it out. I'm sure you'll be able to make their Christmas regardless of what gift you get them, because guess what? It's the season of giving. So, anyways, I hope you all liked the video. Please like, subscribe, hit that notification button, and I'll see you on the next one.